Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and this is Chasing Legends. Welcome back to Chasing Legends. I'm Wayne Tuttle. I'll be your host today. Breaking off the episodes we ran. We still have another episode of that, but for good reason. So before we get any further, hit the notification bells. Please subscribe. Leave a comment if you will. We always do appreciate it. As everybody knows, things have slowed down a lot because we got blocked by A&E. Not always quite sure what the reasoning is. We're going to try to basically take the videos that were blocked in the USA. We're going to do a couple things like blur the screen behind us and stuff and see if that'll be acceptable. And we won't be releasing them as new Monday episodes. We will just, like, during the middle of the week start popping them back out again and replace those videos is what we're hoping. And it's something that in the way you work with YouTube is if you just let things go, it's much better off for you. So that's that. So we apologize for that. I think we ran the four kind of director cut videos. We had one more for episode 1, and before we move to episode 2, we will be doing next Monday, and you will catch that. So those will come back, but there's a reason, a very special reason why we're kind of cutting into all that and doing this today. So first, let's start with coming up this Sunday, April 18th, out in Tucson at I think it's the Mikado Center. If you go to the Arizona International Film Festival website, you'll catch, boom, the Arizona Film Festival schedule. You'll see a film on Sunday the 18th called Lust for Gold. There will be a treasure hunt from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. down there in Tucson. You can go on the website and stuff and check all that stuff out. And the Lust for Gold website has information, but the International Film Festival has the most of it for that day's events. 7:30 p.m. will be the world premiere of Lust for Gold, A Race Against Time. So we will be jumping into that and moving along. So be very cool, very, very cool thing. I'll be down there with Trevor Tyler. I believe Shoes will be, a number of people will be there from the film and so forth. So kind of a very neat thing. We will be there to participate, even though we're not allowed to win the treasure hunt. I think that's unfair. But anyways, and there will be a sweepstakes coming up through this summer. So we'll be giving you more information on that sweepstakes and everything else, which I think the grand prize is, 3-4 to 5 day trip into the Superstition Mountains. So actually that's a very cool thing. And then the movie will be in theaters coming in May, and you can look and talk to your local independent theater or someone to see if they want or if they're going to bring it in. So Lust for Gold, Race Against Time, and then I believe it's June 15th, 12th. I will have it down later, but anyways, that will be when the release comes out on DVD and Blu-ray. So hopefully there'll be some swag they'll throw us, and we can kind of do some sort of giveaways as the film's kind of ramping up, and we'll try to do something live or get some video footage out there while we're at the event. So that being said, but let's get to this week's Chasing Legends actual episode, not all this other funky dunky stuff. Of course, as much as everybody thought we lost you or you lost us or things weren't coming, please come back. We miss you, and we are always thinking about you guys. So we're always thinking about you, and we're getting ourselves back in gear here, and there'll be quite a few Chasing Legends. So we tried that. The one thing we were taking an approach, and everybody seemed to enjoy it. It might have went over really well, but it didn't. But we're going to get back to some stories, and we got plenty more coming. So this is not stopping, and we'll talk about other projects and other things going on. So, and I just heard the last couple of days from Eric Deleel and stuff, talked to Frank, and a lot of things kind of up in the air and planned, and things we want to do here in the future. So with that being said, again, I keep putting it off, but let's get into today's story, which starts out, I believe, around July 2nd, 1980, if the date's correct, and this comes from a man named Tom Collenborn, who we all know very well. Tom had been contacted, him and Bob Corbin, by a guy by the name of Joe Mays. And Joe Mays wanted to go out in the Superstition Mountains because he knew where this crystal skull was located. It was an Aztec crystal skull. And Tom thought it was a bit of a thing, but I think he got Archie Johnson to go with him, and The guy was willing to pay, so I guess Tom agreed to go back in. So Joe Mays and I guess a couple other guys, but they all went back in, and Joe Mays had some sort of information map or something. And I believe where he took them back then, they got out, they started about 3-4 days later. Yes, 110 degrees, Superstition Mountains, and they went back into the LaBarge box. So the lower LaBarge box, and that's where they began to look for the crystal skull. Yes, the Aztec's crystal skull, no less. So Tom meets, he got Everett Johnston. I believe that's Archie Johnston. But anyways, they met with Joe Mays at Cobb's Restaurant, which no longer exists, by the way. Cobb's has been torn down and does not seem to exist anymore, so farewell to Cobb's Restaurant. But they met at Cobb's. Joe Mays showed up with 3 of his guys, and they made deal. Tom, I guess, couldn't believe they were going to go back in, and Joe Mays said, I'll just need a couple days, we'll go back. So they're getting ready to go back in, they're getting ready to pack in, and Tom was thinking about calling off because of the heat and everything, but I guess Joe Mays at that time, now you have to remember this is 1980, offered Tom 6 $100 bills to go back in with him, and Tom said basically as a teacher, with the summers off and so forth, that was a nice supplement to the money he wasn't making at the time. So Tom decided against better judgment to go back in there with them and see what was up on this. So sometimes, you may not believe the story, but it pays to just tag along. So according to Tom, and we're going to this won't be just Tom's story here, as you'll find out later. They went in at First Water, went through Garden Valley, and then went down East Boulder, went down into LaBarge with the horses. I guess they weren't finding water first, but down and they got into LaBarge, they finally found some water holes. But Tom said it was like 11 a.m., 109 degrees or something. So it was getting quite extensively warm. Tom starts to second guess all this with these guys he's back in there with. They did promise, though, each day they're there, that they were going to have the packer bring in fresh supplies and ice. So you're kind of thinking, but I don't know how well the ice would have held up, 105, 110 degrees every day being packed in all the way back into the heart of the mountains. But that was the plan. And so this was the plan. Joe Mays did get Tom to go back in. I believe Archie Johnson is packing him in. So they get all back in there, and they get in LaBarge, where I guess Joe Mays believes that there's an Aztec crystal skull back in the Superstition Mountains. So Tom spent there the first day. They go up and down in the box, up in the LaBarge box. Joe Mays is going up and down, and he finally finds this big 100-foot long crack and says, this is the spot. And he's telling Tom, we need to get in here. So his guys start taking picks and start hitting the rock, and Tom said it was absolutely futile effort. There's no way they're going to dig into this thing. They could be a year and they're not making any headway. So after they spent hours and hours, almost the entire day, then Joe Mays decides we need to get an explosives expert and blow this up. And Tom realizes this is getting kind of dangerous. So Tom decides and explains to him, you can't do that in the wilderness area at that time, 1980, things had changed. And so then everything, Joe Mays decides, well, I must be in the wrong spot. So he starts looking around for other spots. I guess the next day was Tom's birthday, so Tom basically says he sat in camp all day, refused to go out and help them in any way. And he sat in camp, drank some Pepsis, and just relaxed. And then the following day, he decided, you know what, it's in my best interest. I'll ride out, send a Wrangler in with ice and, sodas and stuff and beer for him. But I'm going to get out. I'm done with this trip. So Tom just spent a couple days back there with Joe Mays, realized they didn't really seem to know what they were doing. We're just going to dig into the solid rock. And Tom decided to get himself on home. Tom left, but then Joe Mays got a hold of him again. What happened is he had a number of investors, and Joe Mays ended up pumping $35,000 into the searches for this crystal skull. And the investors got more than a little upset, we might say, and they wanted their money back. And Joe Mays, Tom said to his amazement, convinced them that they should make a film of what they were doing, and that would create a return somehow. Even if they weren't finding the treasure, they would be interested in the film or the movie, the documentary. So they went back, and I guess Archie Johnson and Johnston and Tom got everything set up again. And now they took cameras, and it wasn't a professional camera crew, but they got a filming camera, and everything went back into the mountains. And this all began again with Joe Mays and his crew and filming them going back in. And I guess nothing really still came of it. Tom always said he didn't know what happened to the documentary film. So this is back, we're in LaBarge, we're down by the box, it's Joe Mays, and I'd heard of the story. It's written up in the Columboard Chronicles. You can go online and read this entire story in detail. And I always found it kind of a little interesting, but kind of out there, crystal skull back in the mountains. And then one day, someone emails me and tries to get in touch with me and wants to know how, they heard we're doing a television show and stuff. But he was actually, this is pre when the television show is really getting rolling, and he was wondering if Randy Wright and I would be interested going back into the mountains for him. Now Randy didn't become involved with the television show, so I know it was just at the time we were getting ready to film, but at the same time this gentleman was contacting me, not because of the TV show, but because he was interested in Randy and myself and had heard about we would get back in the mountains and kind of look up things. He was in ailing health, and he wanted us to kind of go back, and I said, well, tell me your story. What are we looking for exactly here? What is it, And I won't say his name. His name was not Joe Mays, but I will not tell you his name. But I still have that on file. But he had quite the story for me. The gentleman comes up and says, well, I got a story for you. And this is the way it went. He'd been back in there. He never mentioned Joe Mays' name. And I've looked through the emails and various things, and never once did he mention Joe Mays' names. And I didn't tell him I kind of was a little familiar with his earlier story. And he told me, did I know anything about this crystal skull back in the Superstition Mountains? And he said, it's back in this crack of rock, and you can see through, and you can see the crystal skull. There's something sitting next to it, and it looks like they're sitting on some boxes of some sort. And I said, yeah, really? And he said, yeah, but you can barely see it through there, get enough light to see that there's something there, and it's back in here. And I was a little intrigued because, I remember the other story. I didn't know that anybody had ever put eyes on this thing. So I'm kind of like, oh, okay, well, I'm interested. And he said, well, I can't get back in there. My health isn't good. It's been many, many years. Thinking back to the story, and this is probably after 2010, so it's been 30 years since those guys have been back in there. So I'm thinking, okay, I kind of actually get it. And he said, I got a lot of health issues. I don't think, I'd love to go back with you guys, but I was thinking maybe you and Randy Wright would go back in there and check for it. And I said, we'd be more than interested. So tell me your whole story, where we're looking and where you think we need to be heading. And that's when it got interesting. So we're sitting there, and I'm talking to him on the phone. I said, well, let's meet at Goldfield. And he said, yeah, that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to meet at Goldfield Ghost Town and sit there and go over the maps. But he started describing, and I took a map out, and I said, well, let's follow through here together. And the area he had us going through was through Garden Valley down to Second Water. And I thought we were going to be going down LaBarge, but it appeared like he was going out towards Hackberry from Second Water. I was like, this is kind of strange, because I knew the story as being out. And he said, well, it's going down by LaBarge. But he said, no, it's not. It wasn't in the LaBarge box. He put us in a completely different area. So Randy and I got really kind of interested of like, well, was this Joe Mays? Possibly. Or was this one of the guys that worked with him, or someone that heard about it, or someone that went on a later trip? Maybe someone put some eyes, or maybe this is an unrelated story because we're in a completely different area now. So I got interested, drew up the map, and said, you know what, I'd like to go back with you. It's not a bad hike, the area he wanted to go into. So I said, we could kind of get back in there kind of a good ways with you. And he said, well, it's kind of rough when you get back near there. I said, well, how about we take a first trip, and when you're feeling well enough, and we'll find a really nice day. We'll take a nice, easy trip, just the three of us. If you want to bring a friend along, the four of us, and we can kind of go back to the Second Water area, and you can kind of get us a little familiar, and we can look at some maps and kind of work some of it out. And he said, well, he could draw something out for us, and he said he would be able to show us everything, but yeah, that would probably, he'd feel really good about that. So I said, well, let's meet up, let's meet at Goldfield this date. And we set a date to meet. I actually set a date and said, I'll meet you there at Goldfield Ghost Town, and I'll bring a topo map, and we'll sit there, and I'll bring actually a copy of that topo map area, so you can keep a copy of what we draw out so we can kind of all be coordinated on this, and he agreed, and he sounded pretty happy about the whole thing. And I told Randy, I said, well, maybe this is just his last trip in, something like that, so let's see what happens with this. And that's when we set the date that we're supposed to go down there and meet this gentleman whose name I won't give. We'll call him John Smith, but we're going to meet John Smith down in Goldfield to sit down with him, have lunch, and kind of go over this map of where we would take this initial trip. So we get back in there, and we got back to Goldfield, and he never shows up. We don't know where he's at. I left a couple messages, and he did get back to me, but he said he had shingles, and he was a lot of pain. So he said, we'll schedule this later, but he said, I'll send you all the information I can. You guys go back in there and tell me what you think. So Randy and I came up with everything, because we figured at least there had to be a crack. So we figured there has to be some sort of crack that you can see back into. So we planned on not finding a crystal skull necessarily, but we wanted to prepare ourselves for going back in and at least having what we would need if we found out, oh, there is a crack, there's something back in there, we can't determine what it is, but let's at least have the tools and necessities of what we can do. And one of the things we came up with was little smoke bombs like you would use for the 4th of July and stuff now. And I amassed quite a group of them with colored smoke, and the idea was to use that colored smoke and everything, and if we found this crack, to send a few back in there. And the idea would be, if there was another entrance, exit, or something, it would, a draft or something, it would push the smoke, and we would be able to, once we found and determined the area, we'd be able to go scoot around and find some higher elevation and look for somewhere where we would see this colored smoke, which we basically made sure, I think it was red and blue, because we figure that would distinctly stand out in that area. So it was red and blue smoke bombs I had, and I got everything geared up, and then I believe Randy and I went out and we never found anything remotely like that. Don't know what it was, but we went back, we went up and down, we looked all over the place, and I don't know if Randy remembers it, but it was more of just a out hiking trip, and we ended up checking out some other stuff, but there was nothing remotely like that back in there. We talked to some other people, and this guy just kind of disappeared on us. I don't know what happened to him. You always hate to think something, more tragic. I don't really think he was pulling our leg. I think he really believed in this. There's a lot of people that they don't believe the Jesuit stuff. They think the Lost Dutchman Mine might have been found sometime in the last 110 years, but they actually believe in the Aztec and Mayan treasures, or some sort of Aztec Mayan stuff in the mountains. And this gentleman was very, very precise about all the stuff that he talked about. One of the most interesting things he talked about was when you saw through the crack, it looked like there were several boxes, and he said they were box shapes. And he said you could never really get it distinct. There was a lot of shadow play, and it was some distance. And I asked him, and he said it was like 15, 20 feet back from this crack. There was a crack, it was solid rock, and then it looked like it opened up, but it's such a narrow viewpoint aperture that you can't really see around. But he said they could shine, and if you try to shine the light, it's hard to get your eye in the crack. And he said there wasn't no way you could get a photograph through all this. I'm thinking in 20, 30 years before, they just didn't have what we had. And Randy and I did bring selfie sticks with, trying to figure out a way we could get some sort of photo or drop something in there. But he said the crack was way too narrow there. He didn't know with a camera then or now anything he would be able to manipulate in there. He said it looked like a crystal skull. He said that's what it looked like for him. It looked like glass, and it was shaped, and it was sitting on this box. And Randy and I came up with a lot of theories that it could have been some sort of supplies, or some minor supplies or something, with a lantern or something. And it could have been, if your imagination just went in the shadows and you can't really see in there, you could be, if you're thinking you're looking for a crystal skull, that could have been what he saw. I haven't heard any contact with this gentleman for probably 6-7 years now. Like I said, but he was so detailed in everything, and very exquisite on the details and the location, and I still have the stuff, but there was just nothing. I don't think he gave us the wrong coordinates, unless he gave us the wrong directions, not realizing, kind of trying to coordinate the map, because we never did physically sit down where he ran his finger on the map for us. It was always over the phone. He never emailed me anything material. He would just talk to me, and I'd say, okay, you get to this point, we're at Second Water, so which way do I go? Do I go north, south? Do I go straight ahead? Where do I go? And we worked things out like that. I was pretty comfortable, pretty confident we'd find, generally at least, a crack. I didn't think, now there was a couple mines, an old silver mine and some other things we found in that area, but nothing else that even vaguely came similar. So somewhere out there, Joe Mays or this gentleman, John Smith, there is a crystal skull, and there is the crystal skull treasure story. I found it fascinating that Tom had sort of a run with it, and then someone else had another one. And I know there's a couple other variations out there of people that believe such a thing, and I've always done that. I've heard them from anywhere from the main mountain and areas around Hieroglyphic Canyon up to the north end of the main mountain, back into places like LaBarge Box and now Second Water. So if you're ever out there and you see a crack, shine a light down and let me know. If you see a crystal skull back in there, because I'd be more than happy to come out with you and try to find out. Throw the smoke bombs, because I still got a handful around here. So I'd love to chuck a few back in there and see if we can get some smoke coming out, and see if we can find a way in or some way to get back to it. Because if they put boxes and stuff in there, there has to be a way to bring them back out. So that's doing it, and that's being it, and that's how we're going to do it this week. So thanks for coming into Jason Legends. We will be back next week, probably with the 5th running for the episode 1. So enjoy. I hope to see you at the Arizona Film Festival. I hope to see you out there for Lust for Gold. Like I said, you can go onto the schedule, and Monday there will be an online screening, so you can buy tickets to see it online before it's released through the film festival. So you go to the Arizona Film Festival, go to the schedule, you'll see Lust for Gold for Sunday the 18th, and then the 19th you'll see they're having a viewing set up online for a very specific period. You can buy a ticket and watch the film there, so a very cool thing for at home. So if there's 5 of you don't want to make the trip to Tucson, log in, kind of give us a little love. Let us know what you think of the film. I think it's kind of a neat film. It's a very different film. It's definitely a very honest film. I think Robert Mays and Bob Brown did a wonderful job with this thing. Very proud to be associated with it and everybody in it. I think you're going to find, when you see it and when everybody does get a hold of it, they're going to be very surprised at how well done and how honest it is. It's very straightforward and truthful. You're going to laugh. If you're a Dutch hunter, you're gonna cringe, but it's just part of the territory, and I found I really liked it. I think someone who's not necessarily a treasure hunter per se or a Dutch hunter will actually enjoy it too. It's about the human element. So please, everybody, go down, grab a ticket if you can't get down to the Tucson Film Festival. I know there's people around the country that just can't go down there. Thank you for joining me. We're kind of putting this video together on my own. You could tell the sun was going down and the lighting changed as I did the video, but I'm getting this sent in. So thanks for joining us for Chasing Legends. I can't wait to see you guys again. We got a bunch of these we're going to be rolling out here soon, but we'll send you set some stuff up, and we'll get everything resolved with A&E. And we're also going to be getting some new stories and different stuff, and some of my own this and that and tall tales and stuff going through the summer. So thank you for joining us. Everyone, please take care. Notifications, hit subscribe, buy a t-shirt, those Dutch Hunter Rendezvous and the Legend of Superstition Mountains. We don't make a thing of it. Gray and black, long sleeve and short sleeve. It's in the whole description where it's like about our channel here on YouTube. Go in there, you'll see the link. Go down, pick up a t-shirt if you get a chance. We thank you everybody for continuing to watch. We will see you next time on Chasing Legends.